Squadron 303 was a RAF fighter squadron composed of exiled Polish pilots. Racking up more kills than any other squadron in the Battle of Britain, they helped break the Luftwaffe's blitz on the British homeland. Even more interesting, these pilots were first viewed as misfits, but when they were finally unleashed into combat, they proved every doubter catastrophically wrong. This is the story of Squadron 303 and how they became the RAF's deadliest weapon during the battle. The story of their triumph begins with Britain on the edge of defeat. In summer of 1940, Britain's situation looked quite dire. France had surrendered and the German war machine was sitting right across the Channel. Hitler's invasion plan, Operation Sea Lion, hinged on one critical goal: controlling the sky. Day after day, the Luftwaffe swarmed the English coast, trying to grind the RAF into dust. The Battle of Britain was a brutal, relentless fight, and Britain was losing. The RAF was desperately short on planes, but even more critically, it was running out of pilots. It was into this crisis that thousands of Polish airmen arrived in Britain, having already fought the Germans over Poland and France. Though around 8,500 Polish air and ground crew made it to Britain, a core group of 145 seasoned pilots would fly in the Battle of Britain itself. They were combat-hardened veterans who called Britain Last Hope Island. Even Churchill told the Polish Prime Minister in exile, "We shall conquer together or we shall die together." But that bold statement didn't quite match the mood on the airfields. British commanders were skeptical. They'd been swayed by German propaganda that claimed the Polish Air Force had been wiped out in days because its pilots were incompetent. Plus, there were language barriers, and the Poles' aggressive seat-of-their-pants flying style clashed with the RAF's formal, by-the-book training. Flight Lieutenant John Kent, a British officer assigned to the new number, 303 Kościuszko Squadron, later admitted, "All I knew about the Polish Air Force was that it had only lasted about 3 days, and I had no reason to suppose that they would shine any more brightly, operating from England." The skepticism was so bad that these veteran pilots, men who had been fighting since day one, were told to practice RAF formations by riding tricycles with radios and compasses around the airfield. Imagine that, battle-scarred warriors treated like kids learning to ride a bike. The frustration was boiling over. They weren't there to play games. They were there to fight. Squad 303, comprised of the Polish Air Force's premier pilots, were vastly underestimated. The moment that blew all that British skepticism out of the water came on August 30th, 1940. 303 Squadron was on yet another routine training flight. Suddenly, Flying Officer Ludwik Paskiewicz spotted a group of German bombers. He radioed his British commander, Squadron Leader Ronald Kellett, but when Kellett didn't immediately respond, Paskiewicz's instincts took over. He broke formation, a serious breach of discipline, and dove straight at a Messerschmitt Me-110. After a furious dogfight, the German plane went down in flames, marking the squadron's first, though technically unofficial, kill. When he landed, Paskiewicz was braced for a court-martial. Instead, a thrilled squadron leader Kellett reportedly called Fighter Command headquarters. His message was short and to the point. "Under the circumstances, sir, I do think we might call them operational." With the RAF having lost nearly 100 pilots in the previous week alone, Fighter Command wasn't about to argue. The very next day, August 31st, 1940, exactly 1 year after Germany invaded Poland, Number 303 Squadron was officially declared operational. In their first official mission, a sortie that lasted just 15 minutes, they shot down 6 Messerschmitts without a single loss. The leash was off. The world was about to see what these pilots could really do. What came next was one of the most incredible performances in the history of all of air combat. The British soon learned that the Poles just fought differently. Having survived the invasions of Poland and France in slower, older planes, they'd developed unmatched flying skills and killer instincts. While the RAF taught a more rigid formation-based style, the Poles were masters of aggressive, close-quarters combat. They'd dive on enemy formations with what the British saw as reckless abandon, getting dangerously close to guarantee a kill. And their tactics worked. In just 42 days during the peak of the Battle of Britain, Number 303 Squadron claimed a staggering 126 enemy planes, making it the highest-scoring unit of the entire battle. While overclaiming was common for all squadrons in the fog of war, Modern analysis suggests their actual tally was still the highest of any squadron in the battle. Their kill-to-loss ratio was simply off the charts. The pilots everyone had dismissed were now ruling the skies. September 15th, 1940, is now remembered as the turning tide of the Battle of Britain, a day that marked the Luftwaffe for defeat, a staggering and unsurprising fate at the time given the German army's recent successes. The Luftwaffe threw everything it had at London in a massive all-out assault to finally break the British spirit. Scrambled twice that day, and shot down. The impact of the Polish squadrons wasn't lost on the top brass. Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding, the head of Fighter Command who was once so reluctant to let the Poles fly, later gave the ultimate summary of their contribution. He wrote, "Had it not been for the magnificent material contributed by the Polish squadrons and their unsurpassed gallantry, I hesitate to say that the outcome of the battle would not have been the same. This was total vindication. The men who'd been forced to ride tricycles had, in the words of the man in charge, helped save Britain." Within this squadron of heroes, a few names became legendary. One of them wasn't even Polish. Sergeant Josef František, a Czech pilot flying with the Poles, was a true force of nature. A maverick who often broke formation to hunt alone, he drove his commanders crazy but got unbelievable results. In just 28 days, he shot down 17 confirmed German aircraft, making him the single highest-scoring Allied ace of the Battle of Britain. His story, however, ends in tragedy. On October 8, 1940, his Hurricane crashed while landing, and the battle's greatest ace was gone. Leading the squadron was another giant, Witold Urbanowicz. After the first commander was badly burned, Urbanowicz took over. Fearless and inspiring, he led from the front, shooting down 4 German planes on 2 separate days in September. With 15 confirmed kills, he became the top-scoring Polish ace of the battle. These men, along with pilots like the charismatic Jan Zumbach, weren't just fighting a war. They were fighting for their lost homes, turning their hurricanes into instruments of vengeance. When the war finally ended, the celebration for the Polish pilots was hollow. Their homeland hadn't been freed. Instead, it had been handed over to the Soviet Union. For most of these heroes, going home meant risking prison or worse from the new communist regime. Then came the final insult. In June 1946, London held a massive victory parade. In a shameful political move to avoid offending Stalin, the Polish forces who had fought and died alongside the Allies weren't invited. After an outcry, a last-minute invitation was thrown to just 25 of the Polish pilots. Standing in solidarity with their uninvited brothers in the army and navy, they unanimously refused it. They had helped save London, but they were barred from its victory march. Despite the post-war politics, the legacy of 303 Squadron could never be erased. Many pilots stayed in Britain, becoming part of the nation they had so bravely defended. Today, the Polish War Memorial at RAF Northolt stands as a permanent tribute to the Polish airmen who gave their lives. The story of 303 Squadron is more than just a war story. It's a story about resilience in the face of prejudice, about courage against impossible odds, and about a spirit that refused to be broken. They were the outsiders, the exiles from a fallen land, and in Britain's most desperate hour, they were its saviors. If the story of these underestimated Polish heroes inspired you, you need to hear about another pilot who defied expectations during that same desperate summer of 1940. Douglas Bader had no legs. He'd been thrown out of the RAF after a catastrophic crash and told he'd never fly again. Yet when Britain needed him most, this impossible pilot didn't just return to the skies. He transformed a shattered squadron and became one of the war's most decorated aces. Tap the video on screen now to discover how Bader went from losing everything to leading hundreds of aircraft over London in victory, and why even the Germans couldn't break his unbreakable spirit.